This is By Gods and Kings, a Script Publishing development. For more information on By Gods and Kings, please visit our website, www.bygodsandkings.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at By Gods and Kings, or you can like us on Facebook. Chapter 1, Malaise in the Grand Temple. "You have to do something," muttered the woman from the corner of the shop. She stood against a stack of stray tools while she stared at an unkempt blacksmith. Tears welled up in her eyes as her emotions were starting to overtake her. "Zucrek, you have to do something. He is our son." The burly, muscular blacksmith blinked his eyes slowly while gathering his thoughts. A great deal had happened over the course of the night, but it was only the pinnacle of events. "What am I to do, Terst? If the High Priest and his allies won't save their own, why would they risk their forces to save Maric?" Terst huffed as she fought back tears. "As much as you've done for this meager village, the High Priest owes you something," she replied harshly before stepping forward and standing in front of her husband. "When the tools for harvesting were falling apart, when they were rusting from years of overuse, who built them new ones from scratch without anything in return?" Terst locked her eyes on Zucrek as her words rattled through his mind. The forge burned brilliantly, with the embers crackling and the sound of steam coming from the wet logs creating a hiss that broke through the awkward silence. "Please, Zucrek, go and speak with the High Priest. Surely he will listen to you, or he wouldn't listen to the others." Zucrek exhaled loudly and hung his head, already knowing the result without even heading to the Grand Temple. "If this is what you wish, then I will do so," he replied reluctantly. "However, let it be known that we should perhaps consider heading to Restos to ask for the assistance of our own order, because I worry that the High Priest will continue to sit on his hands." Terst nodded slowly as her husband rose to his feet. "If the High Priest declines our request, then we will ask for help elsewhere. But we will do everything we can to save our son." Zucrek stepped forward and embraced his wife. He pulled her forward into his chest and kissed her on the top of her head before stepping away toward the door. "We will do everything that we can to save Maric. We will bring him home." Zucrek sighed loudly and reached for the metal door. He pulled it open gently, releasing a cool draft into the warm shop. Terst shuddered as Zucrek walked out into the village and closed the door behind him. The two moons shined down innocently as they did almost nightly, though the clouds overhead were keeping them hidden from time to time. The wind was blowing hard through the trees and pushing the long, scraggly hair of Zucrek to the side. He normally kept it bound behind him, but it was a mess this evening. With his son going missing, his own personal appearance was not a concern. However, he still wore his blacksmith apron and carried a hammer bound to his belt. His thick frame and short stature made him stand out in Tellerefell, but it was of no concern this evening. All of the villagers were in for the evening and the streets were vacant. Zukrek's trek to the Grand Temple was unabated. The dirt path that formed the only walkway in Tellerefell turned to stone as the blacksmith approached the temple. From a distance, Zucrek could see the massive tree that blanketed the temple, providing an ominous visual. While regarded as one of the more passive deities, Falorous and his followers were still quite powerful. Their mastery of nature and vegetation made them highly sought after by farmers and magistrate alike, especially in times of famine or drought. The village of Tellerefell was home to the Grand Temple of Falorous, and while the village was very meager, everyone worshipped Falorous devoutly, with the exception of Zucrek and his wife, Terst. The blacksmiths Zucrek and Terst both hailed originally from Perost, a large island off of the western portion of Quor. However, as a skilled blacksmith and devout follower of Valcus, Zucrek and Terst were sent to Tellerefell to provide assistance to the citizens and help them in their lives. Valcus was not a god who tended to meddle much in the affairs of Dunai, but he encouraged his followers to branch out and build things that would assist the world. Because of this, the most skilled artisans were typically sent away from Valcus's many seats of power. They were sent out into Dunai where they could be the most useful. Zucrek pursed his lips together and exhaled softly while making his trek toward the Grand Temple. He walked in between two large stone walls, his feet crunching on the gravel. The stone walls of the temple were large and covered with ivy, while columns lined the path to the Grand Temple. Small trees, bushes, and other pieces of foliage provided a barrier along the path between the columns, while a massive tree covered the Grand Temple. Zucrek approached the large doors of the Grand Temple. The massive wooden doors spanned several feet high with two metal accents across the planks. The seal of Falorous rested in the center of each door, and two metal handles kept the doors sealed. Zucrek reached forward and grabbed the handles, turning them both simultaneously and pulling on the doors to open the Grand Temple. On the inside, dark green floors with two different tones created a path that led to a set of stairs. Several doors were on both sides of the hall that led to other various parts of the Grand Temple, but the stairs at the front led to the chamber of the High Priest, Tandric Gurtrons. Zucrek turned to his side at the sound of the light footsteps coming toward him. "Excuse me," stammered a voice from one of the doors on the side of the hall. The voice was meek and timid. Zucrek turned to see a priest approaching him wearing the traditional garb of Falorous. "I'm here to see the High Priest," Zucrek announced coldly. "I'm here to discuss the children that have went missing with him." "Zucrek, it is not proper for you to be in the Grand Temple of Falorous after the sun has set. Can this not wait until morning?" inquired the priest. "No, it cannot. I must see him now," implored Zucrek. The priest took in a deep breath, appearing reluctant to assist the blacksmith. "It is fine," boomed a voice from the end of the room. "I will see him now." "High Priest, are you sure?" "I can have him removed," said the priest as he turned to see the High Priest approaching. "No, Zucrek and his wife Terst have done a lot for Tellerefell and the followers of Falorous, even if he is devout to another. I can spare a few moments for the blacksmith." The priest nodded and stepped away into the shadows, back toward the door where he emerged from to leave Zucrek and the High Priest. Tandric Gurtrons, the High Priest of the Order of Falorous, was tall and imposing, with a slender frame and long, black hair with gray streaks coming from just above his ears. His skin was wrinkly and his nose and chin were sharp. He cast an ominous aura as he entered an area, but as a High Priest it was expected. "Now, Zucrek, what can I do for you?" asked the High Priest. "Thank you for seeing me, High Priest. I apologize for coming this late into the evening, but it is quite urgent," began Zucrek. He stared up into the eyes of Tandric and gathered himself. "High Priest, are you aware that several children have been taken from Tellerefell?" Tandric nodded before taking in and releasing a deep breath. "Yes, I have been made aware of it, Zucrek." "Then you must know that the village needs your help. There are families in Tellerefell that require you stepping in to assist them," implored Zucrek. Tandric smirked and shook his head. "You've come into the Grand Temple of Falorous this evening to beg for me to help with the problems of men?" Zucrek nodded furiously. "Please, High Priest, I beg of you to assist," he pleaded. He folded his hands together and stared at the High Priest. "There must be something you can do. It's not just the followers of Falorous. It's my son as well." Tandric smirked and folded his arms across his chest. "And your god cannot send someone to assist you? Have you considered venturing to Rustos to see if the abbot there could send a priest?" Zucrek sighed. "But it's not just my son, High Priest. Others in this village have lost their offspring to the forest." Tandric sighed, completely uninterested in what Zucrek had to say. "The followers of Falorous know the dangers that can lurk within the shadows of the forest. It is not his, nor my job, to ensure their safety." "Excuse me?" inquired Zucrek, taken aback by the passive nature of the High Priest. "I didn't mince words, blacksmith. I said exactly what I intended to," clarified Tandric. "It is not the position of the Grand Temple, nor its High Priest, to ensure the safety of the followers. They know the risks that come with venturing out into the forest." Zucrek sighed loudly as an anger started to build within him. And what if they were dragged into the forest against their will? The High Priest scoffed and shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. "The creatures of the forest would not allow that, I assure you," reasoned Tandric. He shook his head patronizingly at the blacksmith. "I'm sure all of the children who've gone into the forest have done so willingly, and if they have found their way into the halls of Vesia, I pray that they made their way into Falorous' good graces." "So their deaths are none of your concern?" shouted Zucrek furiously. Tandric nodded. "I'm sorry, blacksmith, but it is not," he stated harshly. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have more pressing matters to attend to." Zucrek clenched his fists while watching the High Priest turn and walk away from him. "Blood is on your hands, High Priest. Surely your god views the sanctity of life more than you do." The High Priest did not turn around and acknowledge Zucrek, instead opening a door and leaving the room without another word. Zucrek was alone in the Grand Temple foyer, and now he had to return back to his shop and to his wife. He knew how the meeting would go, but he was at least hopeful it would have gone better. His son was missing, and he was no step closer to finding him than he was before. Hey guys, this is Chris with Script Crib and By Gods and Kings. I just want to thank you for listening to our video. We're going to have a whole lot more coming out. If you could, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and you're going to have more content coming to you on a pretty regular basis. Thanks so much.